Before we get started, I'd like to recognize a few special guests that we have in the audience with us tonight. First, we have Regis's wife, Joy. Joy, thank you so much for coming. We also have with us Todd Zink, a veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan and candidate for the Senate seat here in the 27th District, Simi Valley. Todd? Todd, thanks for coming. Now, before I introduce our special guest this evening, I wanted to start by telling you a few things I learned about the publishing industry as I was preparing his introduction. Now, many of you know our special guest recently wrote a book, one that a lot of you in the audience were fortunate enough to have autographed earlier this evening. Regis's book hit the shelves in 2011, the same year that 3 million other books were published as well. That's a big number, right? Well, when you stop to consider some of what's been published recently, aside from Regis's memoir, you get some clues as to why we're seeing so many books. So, for example, here's Snooki with her Confessions of a Gwydet, in which we get 160 pages of pure modern-day wisdom from Jersey Shore. Or how about the lessons on life from Justin Bieber at age 15? And of course, we should not let politicians off the hook. How about prisoner number 40892-424, also known as former Governor Rod Blagojevich? He is now telling his life story and selling his book from the Englewood Federal Correctional Institution in Colorado. Now, I don't want you to let these examples disappoint you, because every once in a while, there is a memoir published worthy of the name, one written by someone who's had an extraordinary life surrounded by extraordinary people. A life well lived, I would say. One who has received the highest awards in his field and consistent public acclaim throughout his career. We have such a person with us tonight. His name is Regis Philbin, and we are honored that he's come to the Reagan Library. Regis, thank you. Regis wanted to come up at that moment. I said, no, I have more things I want to say about you. Well, for those of you who hail from the West Coast and have lived here a while, you know of Regis as a local boy. Much of his early career was spent reporting or hosting shows from San Diego, Los Angeles. When you read his book, and perhaps tonight, if we're lucky, we'll hear more about this, you'll find that's how he came to know one young Ronald Reagan before he had any aspirations for public office. Now, many of you will recall Regis's first real brush with national fame came as Joey Bishop's sidekick in the late 1960s. But to be sure, every one of you here tonight knows Regis from his time with Live with Regis and Kathy Lee, Live with Regis and Kelly, and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. You spent a lot of time with him in your family room, learning about his day, being introduced to some of the most famous people in the world, or racking your brain over whether that really should be a contestant's final answer. The odds that you were someone who tuned in to see Regis in the last 25 years are pretty good. I say that because there is no other person in the history of the world who has spent more time in front of a television camera than Regis. He holds the record. At last count, I'm sure the number is now higher, Regis, forgive me, but I counted about 17,000 hours, or just shy of 2 full years. Let me restate that, 2 full years of award-winning TV. Regis has won 5 Emmy Awards, including a Lifetime Achievement Award from the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. And in 2006, he was inducted into both the National Association of Broadcasters Hall of Fame and the Television Academy's Hall of Fame. From what I can tell, he's had 3 true loves in his life. His alma mater, Notre Dame, which which inspired him to learn. Bing Crosby, who inspired him to sing. And his family, most especially Joy, his incredible wife of 42 years, who I'm sure is the light of his life. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Regis Philbin. Regis, now. Absolutely.
That was a lovely introduction. Joy, thank you for coming.
Oh boy, hi everybody. Thank you so much for coming tonight and being a part of this. I made the tour like everybody else does, and it just blows you away what this man accomplished in his presidency and in his life. And I had no idea that the museum and the library is going to be this stupendous, but that's exactly what it is. Anyway, yes, I'm happy to be here, and I've got the book out again in paperback, and so it's great to be back in L.A. And yesterday I was at the Ultimate Women's Expo in the big center there, and it was dark, and we have the Q&A as we're going to have later on, and I saw a person get up with white curly hair, and I said, like a wise guy, "Didn't we date somewhere?" And the guy said, "No, Regis, I went to high school with you." You just can't take chances at these things. So anyway, I last year wrote a book about the people that I admired during my career and during my life, as a matter of fact, and John hit it right on the head. I mean, as 8 years old, I fell in love with the voice of Bing Crosby, and I thought for a long time I was going to be Bing Crosby. And as I mentioned in the book, there was a time when my parents, who were young and in the depression of the 30s, and that was a major depression, would ask me. They were so worried about me, my Italian mother and my Irish father. What are you going to do when you grow up? What do you want to be? They wanted me to be a doctor or an attorney or a professional in some business, and all I wanted to be was Bing Crosby. And so I would sing Crosby songs, which in those days were written by songwriters who were writing uplifting songs for the American public who were going through a lot of hell during this depression. And one of the songs was Pennies from Heaven. I would sing it as a kid, and all through my teenage years, every time it rains, it rains. And my mother would keep saying, "What? When? How? What are you going to do?" And so finally I said, Mom, when I graduate from college, wherever it is, I will tell you the day before I graduate. So I wound up going to Notre Dame. My father was in the Marine Corps in the Pacific, and he met the Moose Krause, who was a legend at Notre Dame, and at night, the jungles, Moose Krause would tell these wonderful stories about Newt Rockney and Notre Dame and George Gipp and the Four Horsemen, and these young Marine officers would listen to Moose, who was a great speaker, and become attracted to the school, and that's how I wound up at Notre Dame. And so I could never find out what I wanted to do. I majored in sociology just to get along with people. And that didn't work either. But I didn't know what to tell them. So the only thing I had in my mind was Bing Crosby. So they come to the graduation, and they get out of the car. Oh, and incidentally, before I graduated, I hung around with this guy for 4 years. And then about 10 days before I graduated, I found out that he could play the piano. And I said, my God, my folks are coming. I've got to... You know what I'll do? I'll sing Pennies from Heaven to my mother. Knock her out. She'll love it. And say, "Go ahead, Regis. Become Bing Crosby." So we rehearsed in the music hall at Notre Dame, where they have various rooms with pianos, over and over again this song that Gus knew and I sang. And then came the day when they got out of the car, and I said, "Don't say anything, Mom." And my father, "Don't say a word. I'm going to take you and I'm going to show you what I want to do with my life." Very dramatic. So we go across the campus to the music hall and open the door, walk in, cue Gus. He starts playing, and I sing, "Every time it rains, pennies from heaven." My mother very emotional, begins to cry. She's very disappointed. My father, Marine, boxer, making fists. I'm thinking, what am I, crazy? What am I, nuts? I made a joke out of it. I sang the whole song to her. She cried all through it. Everybody disappointed in Regis. I said, I wanted to be Bing Crosby, but I made up my mind, I'm not going to do it. So we went away like that, and I went into the service. But I was afraid to tell him what I really wanted. I wanted to be a part of this entertainment business, didn't know what it was. And then all of a sudden, television came along, and I thought, gee, but, I didn't have any talent. Now, tonight, I really didn't. And I couldn't admit to somebody, hey, I want to go on television. To do what? What was I going to do? I wasn't a comedian. I wasn't a singer. I wasn't an actor. What could I do? So I met a couple of Marines while I was in the service. And I was attached to a squadron, and we would, when I was with the staff of the squadron. And so when the ships would come back, we would leave the ships, we'd go aboard the amphibious base in Coronado, California. And I would stay in a BOQ, and there were these two older guys who had served through World War II and through the Korean War. They were professional Marines, just waiting to go out there. And they were both commissioned on, I think it was Guadalcanal, and became officers. And they had no place else to go during the Depression but in the service, and so that's how they wound up. So they were tough men, and I got friendly with them and hung out with them. And the day I was leaving, I didn't know where. I guess I was flying. I was going to go to the airport in San Diego and fly home. They came to see me. And one of them said, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I don't know. I want to go into television, but I really don't know if I can. And both of them were majors. And this one tough major that you didn't want to tangle with leaned into me. And he said, don't you know? You can have anything you want in this life. You've only got to want it bad enough. Now, do you want it? I said, yes, but I don't know what my talent. I really want it, mister. Please leave me. And he got mad. He said, I said, do you want it? And I got right up to him. I said, yes, sir. I want to go into television. He said, well, then you get in the car and go up to Hollywood and you make it happen. I said, yes, sir, and that's what I did. I got in the car, and I drove up to Hollywood, and I knocked on doors, and someone in passing said to me, try Al Flanagan over at Channel 13, KCOP TV, which is what I did. I said to the receptionist of KCOP, it was at 1000 Cahuenga Boulevard, I said, I'm here to see Al Flanagan. And I knew enough to say, she said, are you looking for a job? I said, no. I'm a personal friend. So two more secretaries came out, said, what's your connection with Al Flanagan? Oh, go back, way back. I never met the guy, didn't know him. And out he comes, and it's another Marine with hair, like this. And he said, who the hell are you? And I said, my name is Regis. Want a job in television? I gave him my resume, which said, Sociology, Notre Dame, U.S. Navy, Lieutenant J.G. So anyway, to make a long story short, he said, look, I've got a job for you, but it's not coming up until September. Don't call me. I'll call you when it's ready. I fly home to New York. My uncle was a CBS press guy for Arthur Godfrey and Edward R. Murrow. And I used to take me to these shows, but I could never even tell my husband that's what I wanted. And so he said, well, what's new? I said, I have a job waiting for me. Really, where? I said, oh, Channel 13 and Hollywood. And the guy said that I shouldn't call him, he'd call me. My uncle said, there's a lot of rivalry between the New York people and Los Angeles. And he said, are you kidding? This guy is never going to call you. That's the oldest joke in the world. Don't call me, I'll call you. I said, well, maybe he's right. He said, I'll get you a job at NBC as a page. And so my first day as a page was for the Steve Allen Tonight Show. And incidentally, somebody in this room came up and I signed their book and he said, I put you in the second balcony of the Hudson Theater for the Steve Allen Show the first day you were a page. Now, where is that guy? Where is he? Where? There he is, right over there. True, nice to see you again. Go where, True? Oh, well, thank you. So I sat up in the second balcony, and there was Steve Allen down on, they were rehearsing, and I wasn't allowed to let the audience in until they were done. And he was brilliant, Steve Allen, could play the piano, wrote books, wrote music, funny. Everything he said was brilliant. And he had three actors with him, Bill Dana, Tom Poston, and Louis Nye. And Steve Lawrence and Edie Gourmet were the singers. They were kids out of Brooklyn. And so I stood there and I said, my God, everybody's so talented. What is my talent? I still didn't know what my talent was. So, make a long story short, I worked as a page, and sure enough, Al Flanagan called, brought me back to KCOP, and I was a prop guy. I'd carried furniture like this on my back up to the stage, and sure enough, I wanted to be known there as something more than the prop guy, so I would write little reviews, critiques of what I saw on our station, which was a local independent station fighting for its life. And I would kind of be a wise guy and write funny things about what I saw last night. And then in the middle of the night, I would thumbtack it up around the station. Well, it took Al Flanagan about 48 hours to find out who was doing this. And he brought me in and he chewed me out. And I thought he was going to fire me. But he said, I want you to still drive that truck around Hollywood. I used to deliver films all in Hollywood and Studio City. Anyway, he said, but you're right. You still do the driving, but I want you to write for Baxter Ward. Maybe some of you remember Baxter Ward was a terrific newscaster, great voice, and I would stand in the back after I wrote some stuff for him and watch him and loved his voice and loved his delivery. And so, make a long story short, I moved on to San Diego, got a job driving a little news wagon, a radio station, reporting the news from 5 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 5 a.m. to 2. And of course, in San Diego in the 50s, there was nothing going on at 5 o'clock in the morning. So I would go and I would look at the police report at the police station, hang around there all day. And one day I saw a report, believe it or not, the city in Poway, which was a little village outside of San Diego, had the cops come and explore a tragedy in this house. Someone had broken in to the little piggy bank that they had. And somebody broke in and took 98 cents. So the cop had to make a report on this trip, and he wrote it up, and I said, I'm going to have some fun with this. And so I wrote out the thing, and I made it sound like Edward R. Murrow delivering a news flash. This piggy bank in Poway must be solved, Stupid stuff. And Channel 8 called me up and said, we listen to you every day, and we like what you're doing, and, why don't you come and do that for us, only we'll give you a television camera, you go out, film something, you come back, you make a story out of it. And so that's what I did for a couple of years. And then the rival station brought me over and said, we'd like to give you a job. And I said, by that time I had seen Jack Parr do his thing. And I loved the way Jack Parr opened the show. Whether it was written for him or not, I thought it was for real. And most of it was spontaneous. Things he had seen, opinions he had, and I thought, gee, I'd love to do a talk show, and maybe that's what I would do for an opening. So that's how that all happened. So then, 1962, I believe, or 63, not sure, but it was 50 years ago, that, and I was by myself on this show. It was an hour and 45 minutes. It got enormous ratings because there was no competition on Saturday nights. I did the news during the week. Saturday nights, did my show. And I would call people up and ask them to come. And there were no writers, no producers, nothing. I did it all myself. And one day I see Ronald Reagan's name in the paper. He's coming to San Diego Saturday night. So I said, wow, I'd love to have him as a guest. Because at Notre Dame, the first night you are there, you are shown a movie. And in those days, the movie was Newt Rockne All-American, with Pat O'Brien being Newt Rockne and Ronald Reagan being the Gipper, one of the greatest running backs and all-around players Notre Dame ever had. So I asked somebody to get in touch with Ronald Reagan and please ask him to come. Yeah, he'll be there. He can't get there till 11:15. I said, well, that's when the show starts. That's fine. I never interviewed anybody before the show. I wanted it to be spontaneous. So then out comes Ronald Reagan. And of course, I had seen him in the movies, a big smile on his face, big, hearty guy, you know. And he sat down, and by the time he was through talking, and we never talked about politics once, I had no idea he was going to go on to become a governor and a president of the United States. It was just another guest, but he was a special guest. You know, for an actor, I mean, he spoke about this country so beautifully and eloquently, talking about where he was born in Dixon, Illinois, and how he became the lifeguard. And you see it all, and I saw it all again this afternoon going through the tour. And then he became a baseball announcer, redoing the Chicago Cubs game to the people, I think it was in Iowa. It was just a great guy. But the way he talked about the fact that he did what he did, starting out in a little town in Illinois, it could only happen in this country. And so he gave people in the audience were ecstatic about what he was saying, that you can do it in this country. I guess all you got to do is want it bad enough, like the major said. So I was very much taken by him. I thought he was just great. And I had nobody on my staff but my friend, the director, and I ran backstage and I said, "Did you see this guy?" And my director said, "The best guest we'll ever had." And he was. He was just inspirational. So I'm telling you the truth. The next day, I went over with some friends to the beach. The best beach in the San Diego area, I think, is the one near the Hotel del Coronado on Coronado Island. And I was at the Naval Amphibious Base right down the street, so I knew this beach. Well, I go over there on Sunday, and I'm walking around, and all of a sudden, I see Ronald Reagan and Nancy coming down to the water. And I was a little shy about telling him. I told him before he left. I thought he was wonderful, but I just didn't want to go up there. But I watched them. And Ronald Reagan walked right down to the water, and she went down as close as she could get. And he dove into the waves and swam out to where there weren't so many waves and he could get a good swim in. And he swam, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 yards parallel to the beach and then swam back and then did it again. And there was Nancy Reagan looking at him every stroke of the way. And I said, geez, her eyes were just so intense. And I felt the love coming out of her for him, you know. And then he left. And then years went by, and I get a call from Joey Bishop to be his announcer. And it was 1967. And Bishop, you know, was part of the Rat Pack. He knew all the guys, Sinatra and Sammy and Dean Martin. And so he knew everybody, and we had a lot of great guests. But he used to like to impress me with the people he knew, and I was impressed. You know, we would take a walk up Vine Street every day, Vine and Fountain up to Hollywood Boulevard and over to Cahuenga, back down, 45 minutes, to relax him before the show, and I did most of the talking. And so, but one day he said to me, "Hey, tonight I'm going to introduce you to the governor." I said, "You mean Ronald Reagan?" By that time, he became a governor. He said, "Yeah." And I almost said, "Oh, had him on my show 6 years ago." He would have gone nuts. I said, "Oh, that's great, Joey. Maybe Reagan would never even remember me." So we go before the show. We go up to where Ronald is. He's in his little room there, and knock on the door, open the door, and Joey says to Governor Reagan, "Governor, I want you to meet." And the governor looks at me and says, "Regis." And Bishop says, "What? What's going on here? What do you mean?" And anyway, we got through it, and he was a great guest on the show. And, you know, things happened on that show, like all of a sudden one day we had Bing Crosby as a guest on the show. And when I walked with Bishop, I mean, it got down to when you walk with somebody every day for 3 years, what did you want to be when you were a kid? He said, "I wanted to be a comedian. 10 years old, the street corners of Philadelphia. People were laughing, falling down. I was great." I said, "Oh, yeah, you became a great comedian," and he did. "And what about you?" I said, "Well, you know, between us as a kid, 8 years old, I wanted to be Bing Crosby. Knew all his songs, all the lyrics." And then one night, Bing Crosby's a guest on the show. I couldn't believe it. Sat right next to me. I could not get over it. And Bishop wanted Bing to sing But everybody was afraid to ask him because he was such an icon. So finally he asked him on the show, he said, Bing, sing a song to Regis. Like Regis requested this. So Bing looks at me and sing Turalura Laura. Crosby sings Turalura Laura. And it was great. Beautiful voice, sounded great, a cappella. So Bishop doesn't have enough. He says, you know what, Bing? Knew all your songs, knew all the lyrics. Regis, sing a song to Bing Crosby. You know what I sang, don't you? Every time it rains, pennies from heaven. And Crosby just looked at me and, oh my God, it was wild. You know, and I never had a chance to tell him what he meant to me growing up, and that's one thing I write in the book about. You know, if somebody inspires you to do something or in any way touches you, you should tell them about it. I don't care if it's a letter or a phone call, but I didn't feel like I was worthy enough to even talk to Bing Crosby. But anyway, the next day, just to tell you how crazy this business is, I got a recording contract for Mercury Records in Chicago. 55 Wacker Drive. Hey, Regis, would you like to do an album of Joey Bishop, of Crosby's song? I'll tell you why I said Bishop, because I remember I was thrilled, a telegram. So I took it to Joey Bishop, who had enough with me saying that I met Governor Reagan before he did, you know. He looked at it, he said, somebody's playing a joke on you, and he threw it away. And sure enough, the guy called a few days later, and so I did that, and it was a big thrill to sing all the Crosby songs. But so from there, you know, I mean, and there was one other thing that I'd like to tell you about that Joey Bishop show that I also put in the book, and that is in like 1968 and 69, Los Angeles became, you know, a fighting zone. I mean, there were a lot of chaos, some rioting of a sort, and I remember the governor saying, if we can't get this settled, you know, indoors, let's take it out on the street, you know, right now. And he wasn't kidding. He was not a wallflower, the governor. In any event, Bishop gives me the microphone. Go into the audience and pick out a young kid and ask him what he's going to do with his life. So I go into the audience, and there's a little young guy there, like 18 years old, wearing glasses. And I walk over to him, and he stands up, and I said, well, you heard what Joey said. He'd like to know what the young people are going to do with their lives and with this country when they grow up. What do you want to do? What do you want to be? And this kid could not answer me. And he just stared at me. And I felt, my God, this is me, you know, 15 years ago. Couldn't tell anybody what I wanted to do until that major made me say it. And so I felt badly for him. I stayed with him as long as I could. And then I said, thanks, you know, and good luck to you. And I moved on to another youngster. Well, 35 years go by, and I go to a movie one night with Joy, and we're sitting there, we're watching a premiere of a movie. And the girl who runs the movies in New York, Peggy Siegel, comes up and says, I want you to meet somebody. Come on up. So I go up there, and there's a fella there with, about 4 critics talking to him. And I waited, and then I said, I don't want to get in his way. So I started to leave, and as I left, he said, Regis, wait a minute. I want to tell you something. I turned around, we met, and he said, you know, years ago, I went to the Joey Bishop show, and I was sitting in the audience, and Joey asked you to go down and talk to some young person about what they wanted to do with their life. And you came down and you talked to me, and I couldn't answer you. I said, I remember this. I remember it because I was you a few years before I met you. And he said, I couldn't say it, and every time I see you on TV, it's like a wrench in my body. And that guy's name was Steven Spielberg. Can you believe that? So things like that happen throughout. Anyway, Joey finally goes off the air, and I got a job at KHJ. I don't know if you remember that station, Channel 9. I had a morning show called Tempo, 3 hours from 9 to 12. And the governor would come to town. And I don't know, we would get him on the show. And it would be me and the governor talking about, the problems in Los Angeles. And I thought he was just brilliant. And we talked about, the episode that began the whole thing in San Diego, and congratulated him on his advancement in this political world, and then one day he became president of the United States. And I went back to up to Channel 7 and started the morning show. In 1975, I was doing the news, entertainment news at 6, reviewing a movie at 6 and entertainment news at 11. But this fella left the show that they were doing in the morning, and I went up to the general manager, John Severino. I said, you know, Seb, but what I do is a talk show. He said, I can't take you off the news. All of a sudden, the news ratings were going up, and he wouldn't let me off. I said, I'll do that. It was a 90-minute show. I'd go to see a movie in Westwood or in Hollywood somewhere, go back, write the review, edit the film, put it on at 6, go out again to a party, an event somewhere. Sure enough, Pat O'Brien would be there, you know, and I'd say, Pat, come on, one more time for Newt, for Rockney. And Pat O'Brien would launch right into it. I said, go to the left, go to the right, boys. We can win this game. But he was absolutely fabulous. So the years go by, and 1981, Ronald Reagan becomes president of the United States. I said, this is wonderful. Well, you know what happened 69 days later, an assassination attempt. Bullet, well, you see the pictures on the tour. Bullet was an inch away from his heart. He went into a long, tough recovery. There was no more public viewing, and it was, you know, pretty quiet. Well, the president of Notre Dame called him, Father Hesburgh, and said, we'd like you to come back. We know what you've been through, but we'd like you to come back and talk to our graduates. And so I heard he was going to come back. So I said, you know, he's back. The Gipper's returning to Notre Dame. I've got to go back, and I've got to see this. I've got to hear what he's going to say to these young people. So I was afraid to tell the news director, Denny Swanson, because he was a very tough guy, and they were very, you know, with the money. So, and I was taking a crew, you know, a cameraman and an audio guy back with me. Anyway, we got back to South Bend the night before the graduation speech, and I was standing there waiting for nothing in particular. We made a tour of the campus, got that all set up, and up drives a big black car, and I look at them, and there's Pat O'Brien. Now, Pat O'Brien, you know, at this point, was getting up there in the years. And so I opened the door, and I was the last one he expected to see because I had seen him all at these Hollywood parties. And I said, Pat, we got to do Rockney one more time. When are they going to be here together again? Pat, go to the right, go to the left. He went right into it. And it was terrific. And so he made the presentation to Ronald Reagan that day, and then Reagan made his speech, which I thought was a wonderful speech, and I saved some of it for my chapter on Ronald Reagan. But you know, kids notoriously are prone to not be satisfied with what they have, and to look down, I think, on older people, especially those political representatives, whatever politics they've got, and they think, you know, wish they could have done better. So Reagan talked about Newt Rockney here and the whole thing, and everybody loved it. And then he got into the children, the kids who were graduating. And one of his last lines was, we need you. We need your youth. We need your strength. We need your idealism to help us make right that which is wrong. Now, I know that this period of your life you have been and are critically looking at the mores and customs of the past. And if you are honest with yourself, you know that's the way you felt about it when you were a teen or in your young 20s. And you're questioning their value. Every generation does that. May I suggest, don't discard the time-tested values upon which civilization was built simply because they're old values. More important, don't let today's doomsdayers and cynics persuade you that the best is past, that from here on, it's all downhill. Each generation sees further than the generation that preceded it because it stands on the shoulders of that generation. You're going to have opportunities beyond anything you've ever known. And boy, did that satisfy the kids out there that day. And he was right. And so it was a wonderful speech, and I made it part of my book to him, to honor him. And so I'm so happy that I came here today and saw the history of Ronald Reagan, because it's everything that I remember him telling me that day 50 years ago, and I'll never forget it. So I think that's it. I think now we're going to have Q&A, questions and answers. How does that work, Johnny? Yeah. This better be good, you know what I mean?
A number of questions in the audience. If we could just ask you to raise your hand if you have a question and wait till the microphone gets to you so we can hear what you have to say. Do we have a question over here? Thank you.
Hi, Regis.
Hi.
You just said that if someone's been meaningful in your life,
Yes.
you should tell them. Well, you've been really meaningful, I'm sure, in millions of people's lives, but really in my life, too.
But I haven't heard from you.
I've
Regis
so
needs that.
enjoyed watching you over the years, and your gift of storytelling and your singing is awesome. So I don't know why you were intimidated by Bing Crosby.
Regis liked to think he was a singer first. Just kidding, just kidding.
But anyway, I just wanted to tell you that I just think you're terrific, and if it's not too much, could I just shake your hand?
Yeah, sure. Let that woman up here, for God's sakes. What's wrong with you people? Pretty tough to do that in front of the wife, you know what I mean? Yes, sir.
Right back there.
Regis.
Yes.
Will Notre Dame go 12-0?
You know, honest to God, I can't get over what a team we have developed there with this new coach, Brian Kelly, who I know, and I know how hard he's worked on developing that team, that defense, and so on. Thought we were going to lose to Michigan State because they always give us a tough game, but we rolled over them, and then Michigan, and BYU was very tough last week. And here comes, you know, one of the top teams in the country. And sure enough, they were 11-point favorites, Oklahoma, and we beat them by 19 points. I was very impressed with that team. Now, here's my problem. I mean, I've been there when Notre Dame has gone through the season. As a matter of fact, when I followed Steve Allen, I would watch this new coach, Ara Parsegian, and the way he took over Notre Dame without any chance to recruit anybody. He came in the middle of February, and those kids were so downtrodden, so beat up. They weren't used to losing in Notre Dame, and yet they were 2-9 or something the year before. Anyway, Parsegian shows up and puts together the same team, the same players, and creates a team that's won 4, 5, 6. I write Ara a letter. I said, I know you're playing SC in the last game of the year, but I think you're going to go all the way. And I'm out here in Hollywood. I'd love to have a talk with you after the game. He writes back, I can't make it, but how about 9 o'clock in the morning, Sunday morning? I said, fine. Let's make it on the 50-yard line of that Coliseum. He said, you got it. So we make a date, and I go to the game, and we're winning the whole game, and that's a 10-0, season. I mean, that's a championship for Notre Dame. That's Ara, the coach of the year. That's everything. And in the last minute and 28 seconds, if you remember that game, it was a long time ago, SC threw a pass, guy caught it, touchdown, Notre Dame loses. I was so sick that night. 9 o'clock in the morning, I show up at the Coliseum. Open the doors, go out there, nobody in the Coliseum. Just a few hours before, 94,000 people were there screaming and yelling. You know how these SC fans are. I go out to the 50-yard line. There's my camera guy. And there's a fella down there in a car. He's going to go get Ara. I said, look, if the coach doesn't feel like it, tell him I understand. We'll do it again another time because I know he must be heartbroken. So sure enough, he said, I'll tell him that. So he goes out the door, and I'm waiting, and the wind is blowing, newspapers around, and there's nobody in this place but me and my camera guy. And finally, the car comes back. They open the gates. Car drives in. Ara gets out of underneath the touchdown posts and starts walking towards me. And oh boy, it was a tough interview to get through. but I never forgot it, and this guy never quit, Ara, became a national champion 2 years later. Why am I telling you that? Because I forgot myself. What the hell am I? That's the team I'm afraid of this year. SC. I know they keep losing, they keep dropping passes, but against Notre Dame, especially a Notre Dame team that hasn't lost a game all year, they love to crush the Irish. You're Irish, aren't you?
Go Irish.
Look out, buddy.
Go Irish.
Go Irish. Well, we'll see what happens, but I hope they can beat SC. That would be the whole season to me. Next.
Right over here.
Yes.
I was just wondering, you're very youthful, very vibrant. What's your secret? How do you stay so active and very energetic?
I don't know. I've been weight training all these years and taking vitamins. I used to go to a guy here in Los Angeles named Rio Blair, who developed vitamins and who had a spa behind him. And I used to talk about it on the show in the morning because Rio Blair, and I go into hot and cold tubs. The cold tub, I believe, was 53, and the hot tub was like 110. And that would energize you and get the blood circulating. And so one day, who is the guy, honey? The fellow who came, the actor came, and he had two sons, Martin Sheen. And he said, Regis, I got these two wild sons. What were their names? So anyway, we bring the kids in, and they were a little jumpy, you know what I mean? They were 12 years old. And so one of them became the Sheehan in the Charming. Charlie. So, but that's what I've done all my life, try to stay in shape, and I don't know. But thank you very much for the compliment.
Over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi, Rich.
Hi.
Talking about the beginnings back in San Diego, I just wanted to know if is there any film or kinescopes or tape or any archives from that time in your career?
It's funny you should ask because Joy and I just moved into another house 4 years ago, and I have all these boxes of tapes and kinescopes, everything, Ara, Percy, all of that. But what am I going to do with it? Are you in the business? No, but there are people who do things like that, and I'd love to get it all together one day, but I've got tons of stuff. I saved everything. And after all these years, I wish I could see it again, but I can't. It's on small things that nobody uses anymore. I'm here with my director friend, Barry Glazer, and I say, Barry, help me. He just laughs. He's laughing right now. But thank you very much. Were you in San Diego in those years? Honest to God, this never happens. I don't even know my number. Hello? Who is it? Hello? Yeah, who is this? Who is this? Oh, my agent, Lance Klein. Lance, I'm in the middle of talking to people. No. I'm making a little thing up here at the Ronald Reagan Museum and Library. But what do you got for me? You got a job? The crowd is saying, "Go, Regis, go." What do you got, Lance? Do you want me to call you after the Lance? Lance hung up. Oh, Lance was driving, so I may have lost him. I'll call him in a little while. Or I'll call you, Near, okay? I'll call somebody. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I think I did. Yeah, but I was in such a rush, I didn't notice. Okay, bye-bye. Honest to God, I don't even know what the number is. Do you know the number? Joy calls me once in a while on this. The only one who has the number, for some reason, the phone rang one day. I've had this thing for 9 months a year. And one day the phone rings, and I pick it up, and it's Donald Trump. How does Trump get the number? Anyway, they sent over something that I should read. Yeah. Big deal. Where were we? Yes. Who?
Up here on the balcony, right up here. Oh,
Joy, you have a.
I'm sorry, we have a question here first. Yeah, here we go, right here.
What is it, Joy? I'm with people.
I just have one quick question.
Yes.
Are you planning on going back to work?
That is a question that I keep hearing. How does Joy feel about you being home? What about me? How do I feel? So, but just lately, between us, I've noticed her staring at me from time to time like I don't belong there. What are you doing home? And I did the talk earlier today, and so there was a question that these girls were talking about, and do you have a pet name for for your spouse? And so I sucked it up and I told them an intimate thing. What I call my wife Joy, I call her baby. So they said to me, and what does she call you? And I said, Regis. Anybody else? I don't know, honey. There's something maybe there for you you'll be happy about.
Right up here. In the
Up
balcony.
there, yes.
Hello, Mr. Philbin. It's a great honor.
Thank you.
I was a freshman at Notre Dame for the 1977 National Championship year. I went into the ZOM Residence Hall
Yeah.
and graduated in 1981 and was amazingly lucky to be there for the exact
You stayed in Zob for all 4 years? That was my freshman hall.
all 4 years.
222 was my number. What's yours?
318.
318, yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
honored to be here with you today in this wonderful place honoring Ronald Reagan.
It's great, isn't it? I love it.
Inspirational to me, way more inspirational than the 77 football season, but we can talk about that later.
Well, we won a championship that year. Dan Devine did it for
Anyway,
us.
but I could not get off of work early enough to be here for the book signing. I have a book.
Oh, it's too late now, pal. Next! Next!
We'll get
If
you
not
one.
for me, for my beautiful wife over there, Donna.
Yeah.
I
Call her
call
baby
my-
once
I
in a
call her
while.
my love.
It might help.
Please.
Send the book. Yeah, we'll do it. Be happy to do it. Sure.
We'll
Come
get
on
you
down.
one. We'll get you one.
Okay.
Right over here, Regis. Over here. Oh, I can see. We've got time for just a few more questions. I know
Okay.
we're going to miss some of you, but we'll
Hi.
go here first.
Hi, Regis. Thank you for all the years you've just brought a lot of joy to all of us. It's just wonderful. And for 4 years in a row, I flew out to your show for my birthday, and you were so nice. Just
Where was that? Here in L.A. or is that
No,
in New York?
The show waited in the sleet and rain, and it was
Yeah.
well worth it. But how are Mr. Trouble and Ivy?
Was with Mr. Trouble and Baby Ivy last night, and Mr. Trouble is still trouble. We had a good time, didn't we, Joy? Yeah. We love those two kids. The baby Ivy is, which you haven't seen many of her pictures, but Mr. Trouble is a flaming red hair, and I think he's going to be a great little guy. And the baby Ivy is something out of another planet, you know what I mean? Big brown eyes, look at you, because we don't see them that often, so we're kind of new to them every time we do see them. But they're fine, and thank you for asking. Appreciate it.
Right over here.
Yeah.
Speaking of the talk, are you wearing your loincloth tonight?
Did you hear what that woman said, Joy? Am I wearing that loincloth that you love so much? That came up during the talk today. You know how they are at the talk, everything goes. I don't know how it happened, yeah, but I said I do have mine on, yes. Because I was the only guy there, Yes.
Here in the middle.
Yeah.
And we've got time for one more.
Yeah, Regis, did your folks live long enough to see your success? Enjoy it?
Well, that's a good question. I don't consider my success that such a big event, but they were around to see me get on television. One night they sat in the Joey Bishop audience and watched, and And then my mother would come to New York, right, Joy, and see the show there. And, you know, it just is so funny because when I started as that page at NBC, one of the shows was Eddie Fisher, who was a great singer, enjoying great popularity. And he was pinch hitting for Perry Como or somebody, doing a show at 7:30 to 8 or 7:30 to 7:40, whatever it was. But at the last show, and I was a page, they wanted me to hold the elevator for Eddie Fisher, who would walk up the aisle, and there would be elevator banks behind the studio, behind the audience. But he would fight his way through the crowd because they would be tearing at him. This is my last song, Lady of Spain, I adore you. And then he'd up the aisle, and the kids were tearing at him. And he finally got up to the elevator, and I was holding the elevator. And I had called my mother and said, Mom, you're going to see me on television tonight. I was so thrilled to be on TV. I'm holding the elevator for Eddie Fisher. You'll see that, Mom. Watch. And so Eddie fought his way through, got up there, got in the elevator, and down he went. He was leaving for vacation, and I ran down the hallway. I think it was the 6th floor or something like that, where Pages had a desk like this and a little phone on it, and I called my mother up in the Bronx. I said, Mom, did you see me on TV? And my mother said, yeah, but where was Eddie going on vacation? What does that mean? So they did see me on TV finally. And they weren't that impressed, I don't think. Okay, 7 o'clock.
That's the last question?
Yes.
Okay, then we're done.
Hi, Regis. I never thought I'd get to.
Get to what, lady? Get over it. Let's get it out.
To meet you in person
Thank
like this. But my son also graduated Cardinal Hayes.
Oh, yeah.
And Cardinal Hayes had that big rivalry with Mount St. Vincent.
Mount St. Michael. Mount St. Michael.
Was it St. Michael?
Yes.
Well, gee whiz, I forgot it so long ago.
It was a long time. For me, too.
But anyway, they had some football games every Thanksgiving.
Every Thanksgiving at Randall's
It was really
Island.
Something.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad to have to tell my son that I spoke with you.
You know, that school, when I was going through it for years after that, let's face it, always for poor kids who couldn't afford something better than Cardinal Hayes. It was a great school, and the brothers and the priests were there pounding away at us, and we were mostly Italian and Irish and German and all that. Now, I go there once or twice a year, and it's become a Hispanic neighborhood. And so these kids are there, and I pay for some of their tuitions. And so I get a report card about them every quarter. And I see who the mother and father is, and many of them are just there with a mother. You know, father's gone somewhere. And so I talk to them, and I tell them what, you know, they should think of what they're doing in school here and where they're going from here. And to think that they are at Cardinal Hayes. Look what Cardinal Hayes did for me. I mean, you know, I got lucky along the way, and I learned a lot, and it could happen to them too. So you must never think you're not as good as anybody else in New York City. You're as good as anybody and better than most. And so the kids get a little energy out of that, and I love talking to them about it. But thank you very much.
Thank you,
Okay, that's it, right? Thanks, everybody, very, very much. Thank you all.